must be claimed. Thank you very much.
Hola. Salome for Life says, Grand Sheik, can you explain the issue for the ships not allowed to come in the ports in California?
2 reasons. 1, they're not accepting U.S. Treasury bonds and trade anymore, i.e. the U.S. Federal Reserve notes. And I want all of you to start paying attention. And this is particularly in North America and Canada operations, which has the same international number, in case you all didn't know it. And you'll start noticing that some of the ATM machines, etc., or some of the places where you might do trade in grocery stores will start having entries where you put the notes in. It won't say place dollar bills here. It will be saying place note here. That's one of your signals. In other words, the hybrid operations are being phased out, and they're not accepting U.S. Treasury bonds, which we've been telling you all for the last year, that they would stop accepting U.S. Treasury bonds, and you would have a feedback loop, which is happening right now. And this is why you have a supply chain issue all over, i.e., and as Dr. Naila mentioned to me earlier today, one of my favorite stores, Dollar Tree, will be raising their prices.
Which is indicative of what's going on.
But we already knew it was coming. And I've always taken for myself. I don't tell people or suggest people do what I do. Because what I do is my choice to do in my sojourn here. I have deliberately for years kept my own personal life very, very simple. Although I'm capable of doing physical, constructive, great things, I like to see other people do stuff, and I help along the way, but I keep my own life simple because I already know it's going to be made simple anyway. My position has always been, the less I construct around me for my own self, the less they can steal from me. And while it's a sacrifice to some degree, that's my choice to do. But I also know that and knew that they would be liquidating people's states, i.e. stealing from you under the guise of law, color of authority, to do both things, to create stress, fear among the people, also to distract you, and also to cause harm. But I also knew that after the fact, as the people begin to reject Rome, that all your inherited estate will be returned to you. And so I focus for my personal self to keep my life simple, to keep the battle less, so I can also focus at moment's notice, because my spirit is that of a warrior, to be honest with you, that I would move with light baggage if necessary at a moment's notice, with less baggage. But that's my personal position. And so those ships are out there because nobody wants to trade with the Satanists anymore. However, because they are connected in many ways in the SWIFT trade platform that is being dismantled, actually, you see certain trade is continuous by necessity, but where it's not necessary, you will see all of your big trade stores, etc., starting to have what you would call stock problems, and inflation that you're seeing in all of the areas, whether food or gas and stuff like that. As an example, when I went around the store yesterday, before I came down to Dr. G's today, I was in Shaka Mountain territory. Of course, you all know it's the Philadelphia area. And I went around to the store that I often go to, because I do eat fish, you know. And I was noticing when I went past the seafood, as an example, Dungeness crabs, which last year was $9.95, is now like $29 a pound. So that's like triple. That's called inflation. Inflation is put in place by corrupt government to rob the people without obviously saying that they're raising taxes. And this is what they're doing to try to save themselves, i.e., because the real deal, no one wants to trade with them anymore. And of course, by our people de facto being subject to their political corrupt jurisdictions, etc., are suffering the consequence. And this is back to arguments I've been making for years. Start enforcing the Constitution. One way you can do it, being the people of the land, is activating the pre-existing law of the land, consular venue in your matters, coming out from under their jurisdictional powers. You have to do it. No one can do it for you. However, you can choose not to and continue to suffer. I don't want to get into it right now, but I was digging through some papers earlier today to bring down here. One of this is this, and in the process, I found one of my old cards doing business at the house doctor, and I showed that to Dr. Naila, and that was my old, when I was doing business, the regular thing, and I was showing her where I used the AA 222141 non-obligation exemption principle on my cards. And I said, don't say North America, says Northwestern Mexico. And when I did, when I built the daycare for my cousin, and the people from quote unquote city of Camden came around there talking about here's your permits and shit. And I told them, move out the way, my blocks are coming. And I meant it too. And even when I bought the materials, you know, I used that number and we didn't pay that fake taxes on that. And the same thing I was doing when also I was doing the building in Buena Vista, which the fakers, de facto operators came and tried to stop that operation and literally took us to court, and they lost on that same principle. And of course, over the years, I've been trying to help our people to exercise their rights that already exist. And many people came around me who are plants, who have always been secretly pretending to be my friends when they were actually trying to undermine. I knew it all the time, but they were very useful because some of them were very intelligent. And in the process of stealing, they're helping to make the people confident. And in due time, as the people have evolved, the people will shed these parasites themselves because they have served their purpose in their greed and selfishness. Because sometimes, you know how you say, keep your enemies close to you? Is one of those points. However, understanding the higher self and lower self, this is how things operate here. And being that I'm in the spirit of a warrior, my ego is not in front of the issue. My issue is to get the work done for the people.
Well, so one last question, then we'll talk about the 30th. How about that?
Come again?
I was looking for one more question. It's up here like 10 times, so I ask it. Michael Jordan says, how important is it to remove silver mercury fillings?
How important is it?
To remove, I guess, fillings from your teeth that are silver or mercury.
Oh, because also, remember, one of the whole things that they have always been doing is that knowing that we are what you will call spiritual transmitters of the cosmos. We are divine beings manifested in human flesh. One of the things that they've been wanting to do from an experimental point of view, functional experimental point of view, was to get nanobots in the bloodstream, in your crystal stream. And this is again why they've been pressing desperately to get people to take the current jabs of graphene. However, one of the problems that they have run into, they have recognized that with many of the beings, that the graphene operations have what you call a degenerative lifespan, where they start losing power of magnetism for transmission of microwave and other technologies that they've been using for mind control. So they want you to get another jab, and then they want you to get another jab until they can perfect the transmutation of humanity and AI technology, so that they can literally turn you on and off, and thus control you electronically with what they have not necessarily been able to always do with what you would call the transmission of psychic attacks and mind control systems. So if they get it in your bloodline or in your blood, they can contaminate you. Also, the same way they did with the military operations with seeds and ovum of plant life, etc., patent it, and then claim that the people are no longer part of the human family, and that the popes of Rome and the bishopric can, under unum sanctum, declare that the people that have taken the graphene shots are no longer part of the human family, and therefore are not, by rule of law, subject to human rights, and therefore can be eliminated at the will of those who have the patents on those different so-called interjections. And don't think that that's not what's going on, because it absolutely is. And I suggest that you tasks and the toils of everyday life, we get distracted by things that may appear interesting. And of course, there are many things that are of interest and absolutely related to our social, economic, and political condition. However, you have the appearance that many people keep forgetting that we've been invaded, that we are under occupation, and that the people who have been governing us are absolute and positively personators, imposters, misprision operatives, etc., and are indeed not the Aboriginal people of the land. And because they have controlled the narrative, the educational system, which many of you are familiar with, the philosophy page of John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in their animal husbandry training, adopted from Sigmund Freud, etc., who was used as a pattern by them for doing mind control, etc. As Sigmund Freud studied Asiatic African culture, and of course the ancient and established knowledge of both sound and light and the operations of the brain of humanity, which is ancient technology. And of course, they've been using that knowledge against the actual direct descendants of the ancient Asiatic African peoples, etc., are commonly known as Kemites, Ham, etc., Canaan, Moabite, etc. And in your collective world of your contemporary operations on the planet Midgard, on this firmament, known collectively as Moors. I want to remind you, because I think a lot of times, because of the pressures and the cruel, unfair, and debilitating and toxic methods and activities that are induced upon the people of the land, socially, politically, economically, etc., that many of our people, and particularly the younger generations, by having limited reference points, forget that we are under occupation for quite a few generations, and start falling into the mind control systems of the animal husbandry systems adopted from Sigmund Freud. And so it's important for us, and particularly those who recognize and know this, to never forget it, and to keep in mind that we can't recreate the nation. The nation already exists. The nation has been damaged. No different than an issue of a storm coming through and damaging your house and your estate and the land. You can't remake the land. You have to use what the land gives you to make repairs. And you also have to keep in mind your knowledge in harmony with nature of the materials available to you and the elements available to you to make such repairs. Of course, that now you're dealing in the aggregate physical when we're talking about the physical houses, the physical estates, etc. But as most of you know, that estate is not limited to your physical buildings, etc. It also deals with your hereditaments, your liberties, etc. And as a reminder, for many of you, because as you know, as we've talked over the years, a lot of the subject matters that we may redundantly repeat has more to do and is more directed to those who are awakening, distinguished from, but not limited to, those who have been erudite in both the political, civil realm and in positive law jurisprudence, and of course with the operations, knowingly, of the Circle Church and Chancery members of the Roman Curia who have been perpetrating frauds under the guise of judicial and extrajudicial activities. And they have done so quite successfully. Also, with the including and with consideration of the fact that many of the people, the natural people among our own, who over the generations have taken positions of leadership and positions of authority, though limited because of the occupational powers, etc. Very often these beings actually fail to tell the people the true history of them being the true Americans, distinguished from those who have been governing our people under de facto operations. And this is why, again, over the years, we've reminded the people to not forget the distinction between de jure and de facto operations, etc. And so, again, and this is more directed to many people around the land who are becoming cognate of, logically, of the loss of their birthright, because our people are being abused on many fronts. And of course, the human trafficking aspect of the Spanish Inquisition operations in the Western Hemisphere has reared its head, and the people are more aware, although many are still in denial, of the human trafficking aspect of the United States Corporation Company, which most of you know by now is a private foreign human trafficking for profit corporate entity conglomeration of Roman Curia member corporations, etc., regulated under or what you call guided by field operatives known as the attorneys, esquires, lawyers, etc., members of the British Accredited Registry, registered, of course, as you all know, and operative main headquarters at Fleet Street, England. And those bodies, politics and governing bodies, govern and control all of the pseudo court systems that have been operating at North America actually since the early 1800s. Now that is the truth. And you must keep in mind, and you must remember that there have been no lawful operative courts. Article 3 for ambassadors, diplomats, and consulars in relationship to treaty obligations and enforcement, and constitutional obligations in relationship to those treaties and the enforcement, and all obligations in force related to them have been pretty much artificially neutralized, although they are lawfully still in force. And of course, many of you already know the distinction between lawful and legal. And while we won't go into that because we really want to get into the heart of some of these matters to encourage many of you to stay strong under the pressures that are being brought to bear on the people, because the fact, as we've been saying to you, particularly we've been reinforcing it for the last few years, for people to recognize that all masks are off. And when we have said that, in these last couple of years, we are acknowledging the divine evolutionary nature of us coming under a new, or what you'll call a brighter energy of the Aquarian constellation. And of course, that energy disallows much of the corruption of the priesthood that was constructed under the Piscean energy constellation that we are leaving. And that's aside from the fact many of you all know that this firmament has passed through the Futon belt, and you have a different energy also from the sun relative to our position in relationship to the sun. And this has much to do why the dark priesthood has put so much focus on having people argue among each other on a point of distraction as to whether the firmament is flat or round, etc., to divert you from paying attention to the fact of the matter is that they're wrongfully and corruptedly governing you and misgoverning you on your land, with the also intent of extinguishing you under genocide and